It was a blistering afternoon at 1:13 p.m. PKT on Sunday, May 18th, 2025, when my quiet retreat in Cedar Hollow turned into a buzzing nightmare, literally. I'd moved to this rural haven 6 months ago, sinking my life savings into a 10-acre plot with a rustic shed, a sanctuary where I could finally heal after a messy layoff from my tech job in the city. The decision had been a leap of faith. Years of late nights coding and managing networks had left me burned out, and the corporate world's relentless pace had drained my spirit. I'd sold my cramped apartment, packed my life into a beat-up pickup and driven to this sprawling landscape, where the air smelled of pine and the only sound was the rustle of leaves. But as I tinkered with my Wi-Fi router under the shed's dim light, adjusting its settings with the precision of my old analyst days, I noticed a signal drain that didn't add up. Someone was piggybacking on my network. Imagine my shock when I traced it to a hidden Wi-Fi extender in my shed, planted by none other than Karen, the HOA president, who thought she could snoop on my life without a clue I'd once been a network analyst. Have you ever had a neighbor invade your privacy in the sneakiest way? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, because this story of how I turned her scheme into a stinging lesson with a wasp nest will show what happens when a Karen underestimates the wrong guy. I'm Ryan Carter, a 35-year-old tech whiz turned homesteader, and after years of corporate stress, this land was my new beginning, until Karen decided to make it her personal hotspot. Cedar Hollow was a patchwork of sprawling properties and tight-knit HOA enclaves, a place where you could hear the crickets at night and smell the pine in the air. The community was a mix of old-timers like Old Man Jenkins, who'd farmed here for decades, and newcomers drawn by the promise of space, though the HOA cast a long shadow with its rules and regulations. My land sat just outside their jurisdiction, accessible via an easement through their territory, a narrow dirt path I'd walk daily to fetch mail or visit the general store. This legal detail had been a lifeline, one I'd double-checked with my sister Emily, a real estate lawyer who drilled into me over countless phone calls. HOAs will test every boundary, Ryan. Lock down your rights with a contract and say good fence. Her advice, delivered with her usual no-nonsense tone, had been my guiding star, and I'd spent hours poring over the easement agreement, ensuring every clause protected my independence. That foresight was about to become my lifeline. The shed, a sturdy oak structure I'd converted into a workshop, housed my tools, wrenches, soldering irons, and a workbench cluttered with half-finished projects, along with a small Wi-Fi router I'd installed to control my homestead's smart systems, like automated sprinklers and security lights. It was my pride and joy, a space where I could lose myself in the hum of machinery, until I found Karen's little surprise. Karen was the quintessential HOA tyrant, a petite woman in her late 40s with short grey hair swept into a tight bun, always clad in khaki capris and a polo shirt that screamed, "I'm in charge." Her presence was commanding, her movements deliberate, as if every step was a declaration of authority. I'd met her at a community potluck 3 months ago, held under a sprawling oak tree near the HOA clubhouse, where the air was thick with barbecue smoke and forced smiles. She'd approached me with a plate of deviled eggs, her smile as fake as her tan, and launched into a lecture about my unkempt wildflower meadow, a vibrant patch of daisies and clover I'd let grow to attract bees. "Mr. Carter," she'd said, her voice dripping with condescension, "your property impacts our community's image. Those weeds are an eyesore. Join the HOA and we'll help you fix it with our landscaping committee." I'd declined politely, citing my exemption, but her eyes narrowed like I'd declared war. "Suit yourself," she'd muttered, turning away with a huff, her heels clicking on the pavement. I'd watched her mingle with her cronies, noting the way she controlled the conversation, and I knew trouble was brewing. That Sunday, I was troubleshooting my router when my network monitor flagged an unauthorized device. The screen blinked with an alert, unrecognized MAC address, high data usage, triggering memories of my tech days when I'd hunted down rogue devices in corporate networks. I grabbed my laptop, running a tracer route that led me to the shed, where, behind a stack of old crates I'd salvaged from a barn sale, I found a sleek Wi-Fi extender plugged into my outlet, its light blinking mockingly. The device was a high-end model, far beyond what a casual user would need. and its setup screamed intent, broadcasting a hidden network, siphoning my bandwidth, and worse, attempting to access my smart systems. I'd seen this before in my analyst role, a classic snooping setup designed to infiltrate and extract data. I traced the extender's MAC address online, cross-referencing it with public records, and linked it to an HOA purchase order signed by Karen herself, dated just 2 weeks prior. She wasn't just stealing Wi-Fi, she was spying, likely gathering intel to force me into her fold or expose some imagined violation. Fury surged through me, a hot coil in my chest, but I kept my cool. I dealt with corporate espionage tougher than this. I marched to Karen's McMansion, a gaudy estate with marble statues and manicured hedges that stood out like a sore thumb against Cedar Hollow's natural charm, clutching the extender like evidence in a trial. She answered the door, a glass of rosé in hand, her smile tightening at the sight of me. "Ryan, what a surprise," she chirped, her tone saccharine as if we were old friends. I held up the device, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. "This was in my shed, Karen. You're stealing my Wi-Fi and trying to hack my systems. That's illegal." Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the humid air, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said, waving, a hand dismissively. "It's a community extender. Your land's signal was interfering with ours. I'm doing you a favor by stabilizing it. Join the HOA and we'll sort it out." Her audacity stunned me, a bold lie wrapped in a smile as if my exemption meant nothing. Her excuse was flimsy. My network was locked down with military-grade encryption, a habit from my tech days, and there was no interference to justify her actions. "I've got an easement, not a partnership," I said, pulling out my contract, the pages crinkling as I unfolded them. "You've got no right to touch my property." Karen waved a hand, her smile turning icy, her fingers tightening around her glass. "We passed a bylaw last month. Community tech resources can be shared for the greater good. You weren't notified, I'm afraid." The timing, right after I moved in, reeked of a setup, a calculated move to target me before I could settle. I left her house, the extender a heavy weight in my hand, but my gut told me this was just the beginning. Back home I sat on my porch, the evening breeze carrying the scent of pine, and plotted my next move, knowing Karen wouldn't stop unless I forced her to. Back at my shed, I inspected the extender further, my tech instincts kicking in as I connected it to a diagnostic tool. The device had logged multiple attempts to access my security cameras, lights, and even my smart thermostat. Karen was digging for dirt, likely to fabricate some violation or pressure me into compliance. I called a neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, a grizzled farmer who'd lived in Cedar Hollow for 40 years, his weathered face a map of hard-earned wisdom. Over coffee on his porch, the creak of his rocking chair a steady rhythm, he shared a grim tale. "Karen's been pulling this for years," he said, spitting a stream of tobacco into the dirt. "She tapped my barn's power for her community lights, then fined me $1,000 for a non-compliant roof after I refused to join. Last week she bragged about a tech grant to modernize the neighborhood. Smells like a scam to me." His words painted a picture. Karen wasn't just nosy, she was running a racket, exploiting non-HOA properties for her gain. The next day I set up a sting, my mind racing with strategies from my analyst days. I plugged the extender back in, but isolated it on a sandboxed network I'd built, feeding it fake data, dummy camera feeds showing me gardening, cooking, mundane tasks, nothing juicy, to lure her into a false sense of security. Meanwhile, I installed a hidden camera in the shed, its lens tucked into a knot in the wood, a tiny black dot blending with the grain, capturing anyone who entered. The setup took hours, my hands steady as I wired the connections, testing the feed on my phone to ensure it worked. By noon, my phone pinged with an alert. Karen was back, sneaking in to check the extender, her khaki outfit a stark contrast to the shed's rustic walls. She fiddled with the device, muttering, "He's got nothing useful," unaware I was recording her every move, her voice a low hum through the speaker. That afternoon I visited the county recorder's office, a squat building with peeling paint, where a clerk named Doris handed me HOA records with a sigh. "They're a pain," she said, adjusting her glasses, her fingers stained with ink from old files. But they've got to follow the law. The records showed Karen's bylaw amendment, rushed through with forged signatures, names I recognized as loyal HOA members, but with dates misaligned, granting her authority over shared tech infrastructure on adjacent lands. The amendment was dated a week after I'd moved in, a clear target on my back, and no notice had been sent to me or other exempt owners. I snapped photos with my phone, the flash illuminating the dusty pages, knowing this was leverage, but I needed more to take her down. Doris leaned in, whispering, "She's been doing this to others. Check with Jenkins, he's got history." Back home, I got a letter from Karen, slipped under my door, offering a compromise. Join the HOA, pay a $20,500 annual fee, and she'd overlook my interference with her network. The postscript was a threat. Non-compliance may lead to easement restrictions. My blood boiled. She was trying to extort me, using my access route as leverage. But I had a plan, inspired by a childhood memory from my family's farm in Ohio. I'd once accidentally disturbed a wasp nest while exploring a barn, the swarm chasing me in a chaotic blur, and the lesson had stuck. Nature could be a powerful ally. A small wasp nest sat in the shed's eaves, its inhabitants buzzing softly, a natural deterrent I'd left alone until now. I decided to weaponize it, but it'd take careful timing and precision to avoid harm while delivering a message. I drove to a hardware store in the next town, the road winding through cedar forests, the store a cluttered haven of tools and supplies. I bought protective gear, a beekeeper's suit, gloves, and a net, along with a long pole to safely relocate the nest, spending extra time with the clerk to ensure I had the right equipment. Back home, I rigged a pulley system in the shed, positioning the nest above the extender, tied to a tripwire that'd release if someone tampered with the device again. The setup took hours, my hands steady as I secured the ropes, testing the mechanism with a stick to ensure it worked. The wasps wouldn't kill, just sting enough to send a message, and I'd relocate them after to a distant tree. That evening, I met Jenkins and other non-HOA neighbors at a local park, the grass damp underfoot, forming a quiet alliance we called the Cedar Defenders. We swapped stories over a picnic table. Karen had found one for a non-approved mailbox, another for a noisy rooster that crowed at dawn, even threatening to bulldoze a shed for aesthetic reasons. "She's a dictator," Jenkins said, his eyes fierce under his weathered brow. "Let's end her." They agreed to gather evidence, photos, receipts, anything, while I prepared for Karen's next move, the night air cool against my skin. The next morning, my camera pinged at 8 a.m. Karen was back, this time with her lackey, a scrawny man named Carl, both sneaking into the shed with the stealth of burglars. She fiddled with the extender, her fingers deft but nervous, muttering, "We need something to force him out. Maybe a zoning violation." The tripwire snapped with a faint click, and the nest dropped, wasps erupting in a furious buzz that filled the air. Karen shrieked, flailing as stings peppered her arms and neck, her khaki capris darkening with sweat, while Carl bolted, yelling, "I'm out!" over his shoulder. She stumbled out, swatting at the air, her face red with welts and rage, her bun unraveling as she fled down the easement. "Carter, you'll regret this," she screamed, her voice echoing through the trees. I watched from my porch, suppressing a laugh as the wasps dispersed. Phase 1 a resounding success, the footage on my phone a golden ticket. That afternoon, I got a call from Carl, his voice shaky and tinged with fear. "Karen's pissed," he said, his words stumbling over each other. "She's planning to sue you for assault. I didn't sign up for wasps, those things hurt." His guilt gave me an unexpected ally, a crack in Karen's armor I hadn't anticipated. "Meet me tomorrow at the diner," I said, keeping my tone calm to reassure him. "Bring any dirt you've got on her." He agreed, his hesitation palpable through the line, and I sensed an opportunity to widen the breach. Back home, I cleaned the shed, carefully relocating the wasps to a tree a quarter-mile away with my gear. Their buzz a fading memory, but I kept the camera rolling, the footage, Karen's trespass, her screams, the welts, time-stamped and ready for use. The next day, I met Carl at a diner outside Cedar Hollow, the smell of frying bacon and coffee, a comforting contrast to the tension. He handed me a flash drive, his hands trembling as he slid it across the sticky table. "Karen's been skimming HOA fees," he whispered, glancing around as if expecting her to appear. "This has invoices, $15,000 to her cousin's tech company for network upgrades that never happened, plus emails about your land." The invoices were a bombshell, showing Karen's corruption stretched beyond my shed, her cousin's company a front for her greed. I thanked Carl, promising to protect him from retaliation, then called Emily, who confirmed the invoices matched HOA records she'd accessed through her legal contacts. "She's embezzling," Emily said, her voice firm. "We can take this to the sheriff, but let's get more affidavits first." The plan solidified in my mind. This was bigger than my Wi-Fi, a fight for Cedar Hollow's soul. That evening, I got an email from Karen, her name in bold, summoning me to an emergency HOA meeting to address my attack on her. The email threatened legal action and easement restrictions, her tone dripping with entitlement, but I was ready. With the defenders, Carl's evidence and my footage, I had the upper hand. A tech-savvy David against her HOA Goliath. As the stars glittered over Cedar Hollow, casting a silver glow on my land, I sat on my porch, the hum of crickets a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. This wasn't just about my shed anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my privacy. Karen had underestimated me, but with a wasp nest, my tech skills, and a growing alliance, I was about to sting her plans for good. The sun was climbing higher over Cedar Hollow at 01:15 p.m. PKT on Sunday, May 18, 2025, casting long shadows across the rolling hills as I stood on my porch, the echo of Karen's wasp-induced screams still ringing in my ears from yesterday's showdown. The air was thick with the scent of pine and wildflowers, a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped my homestead since I'd discovered her Wi-Fi extender scheme. Her audacity, planting that device in my shed to snoop on my network, had pushed me to the edge, but I wasn't just Ryan Carter, a 35-year-old homesteader starting fresh after a tech career collapse. I was a network analyst who'd once thwarted corporate hackers, spending late nights decoding malware and securing systems, and with Carl's whistleblower evidence and the Cedar Defenders' support, I was ready to dismantle her empire. The twinsy distant moo of a neighbor's cow mingled with the rustle of leaves, grounding me as I planned my next move. Have you ever had to outsmart a neighbor who thought they owned your life? Stick with me, because this story's about to show how a tech trap and a buzzing surprise can sting a Karen where it hurts most. I started the day reviewing Carl's flash drive. My kitchen table a mess of printouts, scattered among coffee mugs and half-eaten toast. $15,000 in invoices to Karen's cousin's tech company, Tech Trend Innovations, for network upgrades that never materialized, their details a stark reminder of her greed. The wooden table creaked under the weight of the papers, its surface worn from years of use, as I pored over an email from Karen to her cousin. "Carter's land is perfect for the hub. Push the grant through, and we'll squeeze him out." My stomach churned. She wasn't just spying. She was plotting to turn my 10-acre sanctuary into her tech empire, a hub that would erase my solitude. I called my sister, Emily, the real estate lawyer, her voice crackling through the phone with the authority of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms. "This is fraud," she said, her tone firm. "We can take it to the sheriff, but let's build a stronger case, get affidavits, video, anything concrete." I agreed, the weight of her advice settling over me like a shield, feeling the momentum build as I jotted notes on a legal pad. By 2 p.m., I met the Cedar Defenders at Old Man Jenkins' barn, the air thick with the scent of hay and the faint tang of diesel from his old tractor parked outside. The barn's wooden beams, weathered by decades of storms, creaked as we gathered, the group a mix of rugged farmers and wary newcomers. Carl, still jittery, his hands fidgeting with a straw hat, shared more. Karen had bragged about a $40,000 tech grant to modernize Cedar Hollow during a recent HOA meeting, but the funds were funneled to her cousin, leaving the community with nothing but promises. Jenkins slammed his fist on a crate, the sound echoing off the tin roof. "She fined me $1,000 for my roof last year," he growled, his voice rough with years of tobacco use. "Said it clashed with her view, never fixed a thing, just pocketed the cash." Another neighbor, Clara, a retired librarian with a sharp eye for detail, revealed Karen had tapped her garage's power for community cameras that never appeared, her voice trembling with indignation as she recounted the late-night intrusions. We assigned tasks. Jenkins would canvass more neighbors along the winding trails of Cedar Hollow. Clara would draft a petition for Karen's removal with her meticulous handwriting, and I'd prepare a presentation of my footage for the HOA meeting tomorrow. The meeting stretched into late afternoon, the sun dipping low, casting golden beams through the barn's cracks as we strategized. That afternoon, I visited 5 more non-HOA residents, the gravel crunching under my boots as I traversed. Their properties, each stop revealing a new layer of Karen's tyranny. One elderly woman, Mrs. Hargrove, showed me a fine for her unapproved garden gnomes. Their painted faces now faded from neglect after she'd hidden them to avoid further penalties. Another, a young father named Tom, recounted threats to block his easement over a noisy windmill that powered his off-grid home, its blades silent now out of fear. A third, a widow named Ellen, tearfully described Karen demanding she repaint her garage, claiming its weathered grey clashed with the HOA's pastel palette. Ellen had complied, spending her pension, only to receive another fine. They signed our petition, their signatures shaky but resolute, swelling our ranks to 12. Clara handed me public records she'd pulled from the county archive, the pages yellowed and brittle, showing Tech Trend Innovations was a shell company, with no real projects, just a front for Karen's embezzlement, its address a post office box in a neighboring town. By dusk, we distributed flyers around Cedar Hollow. The paper, rustling in the evening breeze, headlined "Karen's Tech Scam Exposed," with a grainy shot of her fleeing my shed. Welts on her arms, a testament to her misstep. Residents whispered in their yards, their anger simmering under the twilight sky. Karen's control was fraying at the edges. The next morning, Monday, May 19th, 2025, I got a text from Carl at dawn. The ping waking me from a restless sleep. "Karen's holding the emergency meeting at 10 a.m. to address your assault. She's got a new tech guy." I smirked, the coffee bitter on my tongue as I read it. Her panic was our opening, a crack in her armor I intended to widen. I upgraded my shed camera with a live feed to stream the meeting on X, the device's tiny red light blinking as I synced it to my laptop, ensuring transparency for the world to see. The defenders met at my place at 9 a.m., the shed's oak walls, a fortress of resolve, the morning dew still clinging to the wildflowers outside. Jenkins brought a stack of affidavits from neighbors, their ink smudged from hurried writing, while Clara prepared a legal brief on the forged bylaw, her pen scratching against paper in the quiet. As we strategized, I checked my sandboxed network. Karen had tried accessing my fake camera feeds again overnight, her desperation a digital footprint, and I adjusted the feed to show more mundane clips, luring her deeper into the trap. At 10 a.m., the HOA office was a powder keg, 50 residents packed inside, their murmurs a low rumble as they shifted in the creaky chairs, some spilling onto the lawn with signs reading, "Stop the Spying." Karen stood at the front, her khaki outfit pristine despite the welts on her arms, her grey bun tight but her hands trembling as she gripped the podium. Her new tech guy, a slick man named Victor with a tablet in hand, flanked her, his confidence a thin veneer, while her lawyer, Mark, hovered nearby, his suit wrinkled from stress. "Neighbors," Karen began, her voice trembling with forced confidence, "we're here to address Mr. Carter's dangerous attack on me. His actions threaten our community's safety with that wasp trap." She showed a photo of my shed, its oak walls now infamous, claiming the wasps were biological warfare, a wild exaggeration that drew skeptical looks from the crowd. Stood my laptop a beacon of truth against her lies. "Karen, you trespassed and planted a Wi-Fi extender in my shed," I said, projecting the video of her sneaking in, her fingers deft on the device, then screaming as wasps swarmed in a chaotic blur. The crowd gasped, some chuckling as she flailed, her khaki capris darkening with sweat, while I narrated the invasion of privacy with the calm of my analyst days. "This is theft and invasion of privacy," I added, clicking to Carl's invoices. $15,000 to Tech Trend Innovations, a damning paper trail. This is where our fees went, not to Tech but to her family. I showed Doris's charter clause proving the HOA's bylaw was invalid without a 75% vote, never held, the signatures a sloppy forgery. Residents booed, their anger erupting. Like a storm, the room vibrating with their shouts. Mark tried to interject, citing HOA authority with a shaky voice, but Jenkins stood, his frame towering. "You forged that bylaw," he shouted, waving Doris's records, the pages rustling like leaves in a gale. Karen's face flushed, her composure cracking like dry earth. "This is a conspiracy. The tech hub was for the community," she screeched, her voice rising above the din, but the crowd wasn't buying it, their disbelief a palpable force. Clara yelled, "You tapped my power, where's my camera?" Her voice cutting through the noise while others joined, sharing stories of fines and threats. Tom's windmill, Ellen's garage, Mrs. Hargrove's gnomes, each tale a brick in the wall against Karen. Victor tried to back her up, claiming the extender was standard protocol with a rehearsed spiel, but I countered with my network logs, the screen flashing with timestamps of her access attempts, her digital fingerprints undeniable. The room erupted, chairs scraping as residents stood, and Mark stepped back, sensing the tide turning against him. Carl slipped me a note, his handwriting shaky. "She's got a ledger in her car. Financials." I nodded, texting Jenkins to grab it, my pulse quickening as the plan unfolded. As chaos peaked, Jenkins darted outside, his boots thudding on the wooden steps, returning with the ledger, a worn notebook with scrawled figures totaling $60,000. In misappropriated fees, its pages dog-eared from use. The crowd hushed, then roared anew, the evidence a match to the powder keg. By noon, Deputy Evans entered, his badge a symbol of justice against the oak-paneled walls, his boots heavy on the floor. "Ms. Karen," he said, his tone unyielding, "you're under investigation for fraud, theft, and forgery." Karen's face drained, her hands clutching the podium as if it could save her. "This is outrageous," she cried, her voice breaking. But Evans wasn't swayed, cuffing her with practiced efficiency as residents cheered, their voices a thunderclap. Mark muttered excuses, client privilege, a weak shield, and fled while Victor slinked away, his tablet useless against the truth, disappearing into the crowd. Outside, under a scorching sun that baked the gravel lot, I addressed the crowd with the defenders, the pine trees swaying in the breeze. "This isn't just about my shed," I said, my voice steady over the murmurs. "It's about our privacy. Karen's been spying and stealing, but we're taking Cedar Hollow back." I unveiled a plan for a voluntary homestead alliance, a network of trust, not control, its details sketched on a whiteboard I'd brought, the ink drying under the heat. Jenkins proposed a fund for Karen's victims, his calloused hand raised, while Clara suggested a bonfire to celebrate, her eyes alight with hope. The crowd applauded, some crying, others laughing, their relief palpable as they hugged neighbors they'd once feared under Karen's rule. A local blogger, Mia, live-streamed it, her camera catching the sweat on my brow, her feed trending on X with "You Sting the Karen," the hashtag, a digital rallying cry. That afternoon, I visited Doris at the county clerk's office, the building's heir, conditioning a relief from the heat, where she handed me a bombshell. The HOA's original charter lacked a required state filing, rendering it invalid since 1990, its pages yellowed with age. "They've been illegal this whole time," she said, winking, her glasses glinting. "You could dissolve them with this." I filed a petition with 25 signatures, the ink fresh on the forms, seeking dissolution and refunds, the stack a testament to our resolve. Back home, I checked the live feed on my laptop. Residents were still at the HOA office chanting, "Audit now!" Their voices a distant hum through the speakers, Karen's grip slipping as the defenders drove the wedge deeper into her foundation. The next day, Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, Evans called with an update, his voice crackling through my phone as I sat on the porch, the morning dew glistening on the grass. Karen's home raid found offshore accounts, he said. She's laundered $80,000 through her cousin, plus emails about the tech hub. She wanted your land for it. She's facing felony charges. The ledger confirmed it, its figures a maze of deceit, and a blueprint from her files showed her plan to turn my homestead into a community tech center she'd dominate. Its lines, drawn over a map of my property. I felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion, the weight of the fight settling into my bones. That evening, I rallied the defenders at Jenkins' barn, the hayloft's shadows stretching long, reviewing Doris's charter clause and Evan's findings. Clara had photos of Victor installing extenders in other sheds, the images grainy but damning, while Emily drafted a press release, her pen scratching against paper in the dim light. "She'll fight," Emily warned, her brow furrowed. "But we've got her, keep the pressure on." The next morning I got a cease and desist letter from Karen's new lawyer, the envelope slipping under my door with a thud, accusing me of intentional harm and demanding $15,000. Its legalese a desperate grasp. I laughed, the sound echoing in my quiet kitchen, forwarding it to Evans with a quick photo. "Desperation," he replied via text, his words blunt. "Her assets are frozen, her hub's dead in the water." By noon, new signs appeared along the easement. "Protect our network," with Karen's photo airbrushed to perfection, a glossy lie plastered on wooden stakes. Her PR spin was a last gasp, but it was too late. Cedar Hollow was awake, its residents murmuring in their yards, their trust in her shattered. I met Mia at a cafe, the aroma of roasted coffee beans filling the air, sharing our evidence over a table cluttered with papers, and her blog post, "Cedar Hollow HOA President Arrested in Tech Fraud Scandal," hit X by evening, trending with "Sting the Karen," its reach spreading like wildfire. That afternoon, I fortified my shed with a biometric lock, the scanner's green light a satisfying click, and upgraded cameras with motion sensors, their lenses glinting in the afternoon sun, ensuring my homestead's safety from further intrusion. The defenders planned an emergency meeting for tomorrow, aiming to vote out the board, the agenda scribbled on a notepad I carried. Jenkins suggested live-streaming it to X, his voice gruff but excited, while Clara offered to organize the bonfire, her plans including a playlist of folk tunes to lift spirits. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over my land, the pine trees silhouetted against the horizon, I sat on my porch, the scent of cedar soothing me, the cricket's chorus a balm after days of tension. This wasn't just about my Wi-Fi anymore. It was about freedom, about reclaiming my space. Karen had underestimated me, but with the defenders, Carl's bravery, and a wasp nest's chaos, I was ready to finish this, the night air cool against my skin as I planned the final sting. The morning of the emergency Cedar Hollow meeting broke at 01:27 p.m. PKT on Sunday, May 18, 2025, with a sky painted in shades of amber and gold, the sunlight filtering through the pine trees as if nature itself was cheering our victory. I stood in my kitchen, the faint hum of my shed's new security system a testament to the fight I'd waged, my sister Emily at my side, her legal mind buzzing with strategy as she sipped her coffee, the mug's steam rising in lazy curls. The room was warm with the scent of brewing beans, the counter cluttered with notes and laptops, a battle station for our final push. Karen's Wi-Fi extender scheme, her spying, her threats. They'd driven me, Ryan Carter, a 35-year-old homesteader and former tech analyst, to my breaking point, but with the Cedar defenders and a wasp nest's chaos, I was ready to end her reign once and for all. Yesterday's HOA office uproar had shattered her facade, exposing her corruption to the community, and today we'd bury it for good, ensuring Cedar Hollow could breathe free. Have you ever watched a bully's empire crumble under the weight of their own deceit? Stay with me, because this story's about to show how a sting can topple a Karen's tyranny, leaving a community stronger in its wake. The HOA office was a volcano by 10 a.m., over 70 residents crammed inside, their voices a roar as they waved signs reading, "End the spying and Karen's out." The small building, with its oak-paneled walls and faded carpet, felt like a pressure cooker. the air thick with tension and the scent of old coffee from a pot in the corner. Karen stood at the front, her khaki outfit pressed to perfection, her short grey bun tight as ever, but her arms bore fading wasp welts, a visible scar of her trespass that no amount of concealer could hide. Her lawyer Mark flanked her, his tie askew from stress, his brow glistening with sweat, while Victor, her tech guy, hovered nervously, clutching a tablet as if it could shield him from the crowd's wrath. "Neighbors," Karen began, her voice quivering with forced authority, her hands gripping the podium like a lifeline. "We're here to address Mr. Carter's reckless attack on me. His wasp trap endangered my life, and his claims are fabrications meant to undermine our community's progress." She flashed a photo of my shed on a projector screen, its oak walls now a symbol of resistance, alleging a health hazard, a desperate spin that drew skeptical murmurs from the crowd, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. I stepped forward, my laptop a beacon of truth against her lies, its screen glowing with the evidence I'd meticulously gathered. "Karen, you planted a Wi-Fi extender in my shed to spy on me," I said, my voice steady, honed by years of presenting to corporate boards, as I projected the video of her sneaking in, her fingers deft on the device, then screaming as wasps swarmed in a chaotic blur of wings and stings. The crowd gasped, some laughing as she flailed, her khaki capris a comical contrast to her panic, while I narrated the invasion of privacy with the calm precision of my analyst days. "This is theft and invasion of privacy," I added, clicking to Carl's invoices. $60,000 funneled to Tech Trend Innovations, a damning paper trail of her corruption. This is where our fees went, not to tech upgrades, but to her family's pockets. I showed Doris's charter clause, proving the HOA's bylaw was invalid without a 75% vote. Never held. The signatures a sloppy forgery that didn't even match the residents' names. Residents booed, their fury a tidal wave, the room vibrating. With their shouts, chairs scraping as they stood to voice their outrage. Jenkins stood, his frame towering over the crowd, his voice booming like thunder. "How you forged that bylaw," he shouted, waving the county records, the pages rustling like leaves in a storm, his weathered face set with determination. Karen's composure crumbled, her face flushing a deep crimson, her voice shrill as she tried to regain control. "This is a vendetta. The tech hub was for our benefit," she screeched, her words barely audible over the crowd's jeers, but the residents weren't buying it, their disbelief a palpable force that filled the room. Clara yelled, "You tapped my power, where's my camera?" Her voice cutting through the noise, her glasses slipping down her nose as she pointed accusingly, while others joined, recounting fines and threats. Tom's windmill, Ellen's. Garage Mrs. Hargrove's gnomes, each tale a brick in the wall against Karen's tyranny. Mark tried to interject, citing HOA jurisdiction with a shaky voice, but Emily countered with legal precedents, her brief silencing him as she stood, her posture commanding, her words sharp as a blade. Carl slipped me a note, his handwriting shaky on a torn piece of paper. "She's got a USB with grant records in her bag." I nodded, my pulse quickening, texting Jenkins to grab it, the plan unfolding like a well-coded script. As chaos peaked, Jenkins darted to her side, his boots thudding on the creaky floor, returning with the USB, a record of $100,000 in misappropriated grant funds, its files a digital smoking gun that sealed her fate. By noon, Deputy Evans entered, his badge a symbol of justice against the oak-paneled walls, his boots heavy on the floor as he navigated the crowd. "Ms. Karen," he said, his tone unyielding, his eyes hard as steel, "you're under arrest for fraud, theft, and forgery." Karen's face drained of color, her hands clutching the podium as if it could save her, her knuckles white with desperation. "This is a setup," she cried, her voice breaking. But Evans wasn't moved, cuffing her with practiced efficiency as residents cheered, their voices a thunderclap that echoed off the walls. Mark slunk away, muttering client privilege as a weak shield, his suit jacket flapping as he fled, while Victor fled, his tablet useless against the truth, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. Outside, under a blazing sun that baked, the gravel lot, the pine trees swaying in the breeze, I addressed the crowd with the defenders, my voice carrying over the murmurs. "This is about our privacy," I said, my tone steady despite the heat. Karen's been spying and stealing, but we're reclaiming Cedar Hollow. I unveiled a plan for a voluntary homestead network, a system of trust, not control, its details sketched on a whiteboard I'd brought, the ink drying under the sun's glare. Jenkins proposed a victim fund, his calloused hand raised, his voice gruff with emotion, while Clara suggested a bonfire to celebrate, her eyes alight with hope, her hands clasped in excitement. The crowd roared, some crying, others laughing, their relief palpable as they hugged neighbors they'd once feared under Karen's rule, the air filled with the scent of dust and victory. That afternoon, Evans called with an update, his voice crackling through my phone as I sat on my porch, the afternoon sun warm on my skin, the crickets beginning their evening song. "Karen's confessing," he said, his tone matter-of-fact. "The USB has bank records, $100,000 laundered through offshore accounts, plus emails about the tech hub. She wanted your land for it. She's looking at 5 years probation and full restitution." The raid on her home uncovered a second ledger, detailing every payment in her meticulous handwriting, and a blueprint showed her plan to turn my homestead into a community tech center she'd dominate, its lines drawn over a map of my property, with my shed circled in red ink. I felt a surge of triumph, tempered by relief, the weight of the fight lifting like a fog burned away by the sun. That evening I rallied the defenders at Jenkins' barn, the hayloft's shadows stretching long as the sun dipped below the horizon, the air filled with the scent of hay and the distant lowing of cattle. We reviewed Doris's charter clause and Evans's findings, the papers spread across a makeshift table of crates. Clara had photos of Victor planting extenders in other sheds, the images grainy but damning, while Emily drafted a press release, her pen scratching against paper in the dim light of a lantern. "She'll appeal," Emily warned, her brow furrowed, her glasses slipping down her nose. "But we've got her. Keep the pressure on." The next morning, Monday, May 19th, 2025, I got a panicked call from Mark, his voice trembling through the phone as I stood in my kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee grounding me. He demanded I drop my petition or face a countersuit, his threats hollow against the evidence we'd amassed. I laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet space, forwarding the call log to Evans with a quick note. "Desperation," he replied via text, his words blunt as ever. "Her assets are frozen. Her hub's a fantasy now." By noon, new signs appeared along the easement, their glossy sheen a stark contrast to the dirt path. "Support our network," with Karen's photo, airbrushed to perfection, a glossy lie plastered on wooden stakes driven into the ground. Her PR spin was a last gasp, a feeble attempt to reclaim control, but it was too late. Cedar Hollow was awake, its residents murmuring in their yards, their trust in her shattered like glass underfoot. I met Mia, the blogger, at a park, the grass damp underfoot, the air filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers, sharing our evidence over a picnic table cluttered with papers. Her blog post, "Cedar Hollow HOA President Arrested in Tech Fraud Scandal," hit X by evening, trending with "Chaka Sting the Karen," its reach spreading like wildfire across the platform, the comments a flood of support from strangers who'd faced their own Karens. That afternoon I fortified my shed with a biometric lock, the scanner's green light a satisfying click as I tested it, and upgraded cameras with motion sensors, their lenses glinting in the afternoon sun, ensuring my homestead's security from further intrusion. The shed's oak walls, scarred from years of use, stood as a testament to my resilience, its contents, tools, routers, memories, safe at last. The defenders planned tomorrow's meeting to vote out the board, the agenda scribbled on a notepad. I carried, the pages crinkled from constant handling. Jenkins suggested live streaming it to X, his voice gruff but excited, his hands gesturing wildly as he spoke, while Clara offered to organize the bonfire, her plans including a playlist of folk tunes to lift spirits, her smile a beacon of hope. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over my land, the pine trees silhouetted against the horizon, I sat on my porch, the scent of cedar soothing me, the crickets' chorus a balm after days of tension. The sky turned a deep orange, the stars beginning to peek through, each one a reminder of the freedom we'd fought for. This wasn't just about my Wi-Fi anymore. It was about freedom, about reclaiming my space and my peace. The next day, Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, the meeting was a triumph. 80 residents voting unanimously to dissolve the HOA, citing its illegal status, their hands raised in a sea of agreement that filled the room with a palpable energy. Evans oversaw the process, his presence a steady anchor, ensuring fairness as ballots were cast while Mia live-streamed it, her camera capturing the sweat on my brow, the chat exploding with support, messages from across the country, from people who'd faced similar battles, their words a digital embrace. We won our class action lawsuit, securing $200,000 in refunds, which funded a community garden with raised beds of daisies and sunflowers, a hiking trail through the woods, and repairs. For Karen's victims, new roofs, restored windmills, painted garages. Local media dubbed it the Cedar Hollow Sting, sparking HOA reforms across the region, with my shed as the symbol of resistance, its image plastered on news sites and shared across X, a beacon for others to rise up. A year later, my homestead was a haven, the shed a workshop where neighbors gathered on weekends to learn tech skills I taught them, their laughter filling the air as they debugged routers and set up secure networks. The former HOA office became a community hub, funded by a rural tech grant from a foundation impressed by our fight, its walls now painted with murals of pine trees and wildflowers, a space for meetings and celebrations. They hired me to design its network, a role that healed old scars from my corporate days. The hum of servers a comforting echo as I worked. Karen served her probation, working at a call center in a neighboring town. Her khaki replaced by a headset, her voice monotone as she answered calls, fitting justice for a woman who'd buzzed into trouble with her schemes. Emily called to congratulate me. Her voice warmed through the phone as I stood on my porch, the evening breeze rustling the leaves. "You didn't just save your shed," she said, her pride evident. "You saved Cedar Hollow from her grip." I smiled, thinking of her advice, lock down your rights. It had led me here, to a place where neighbors trusted, not trespassed, where privacy was a right, not a privilege. As I sat on my porch, the sunset painting the pines gold, the sky a canvas of fiery hues, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. It began with a hidden extender and a wasp nest, a small sting that exposed a web of greed woven through Cedar Hollow's heart. But it ended with a stronger community, where trust bloomed like the wildflowers I'd fought to keep, where neighbors shared skills and stories, not surveillance. If you're facing an HOA, Karen, check your contracts, rally your allies, and don't fear nature's help. Sometimes a buzz is all it takes to turn the tide, to remind those who overreach that even the smallest sting can bring down the mightiest. Tyrant, thanks for joining me on this wild sting with QA stories, a tale of resilience and retribution in the quiet hills of Cedar Hollow.